Alright, today we are learning to make slab dishes or bowls using the hump mold technique. Okay, so we're going to look at a few different types of hump molds, and hump just means that the clay is going to be humped over the mold. So this is a pretty common type of hump mold that we have in the ceramics studio. This is made of plaster, and this was probably created to make the exact form someone wanted. You can kind of see some marks left by clay. We can put any shape slab on a hump mold. So we could make a circular plate or bowl, or we could make a square or triangle shape using a hump mold. This is another common type of hump mold in the ceramics studio. This is made by GR Pottery Forms. It is a kind of wood composite material. These come in all different shapes and sizes, and they are available at Clay Art Center. This is just a metal bowl. This is something that you're more likely to have at home. Unlike the wood composite or the plaster, which are both porous materials that your clay is a little less likely to stick to, a metal or plastic or glass bowl is going to be sticky. So we're going to be protecting it using a bit of plastic or a bit of paper, newsprint or newspaper. So I'm going to show you the demonstration using this because this is something you're more likely to have access to. The thing you're going to want to do is roll out your slab. I rolled out a big slab, but if you're working at home with a smaller surface or a smaller rolling pin or like a wine bottle or water bottle, you can always roll out smaller slabs. Next, I'm going to smooth the slab with my metal rib on both sides. I've already done that. And this has been sitting out for just a short period of time. We want our slab to be pretty plastic when we do this technique. So I'm going to cut out a shape. This could be really any shape. So I'm just going to use this yogurt container. I'm going to lay it down. Alright, so I'm going to lay my template down using my needle tool. I'm going to cut it out. Alright, and I've got my slab to use for this piece. As we talked about, this is sticky, so if I put my slab onto here, honestly, it's like never coming off. So I'm going to put a piece of this thin plastic, or I could use some newspaper. Now both are going to give you a little bit of impression on your surface. This thin plastic is nice because it won't leave too much of an impression, but that's normal and natural and that's totally fine. So I'm going to lay this over, and now I'm going to lay my slab over, and I'm going to gently conform the slab to the mold. Alright, so now it's in that nice bowl shape, or this is kind of a vessel that is between a plate and a bowl, a salad bowl kind of. So I am going to let this hang out here uncovered until it can hold its shape and I can take it off of the mold. Between my template and my hump mold, I can replicate this and make multiples of it. Because there is plastic and metal underneath, if I cover this in plastic, it's going to take forever to dry. So we're going to need to monitor this closely until it gets to that stage where we can take it off. Okay, now I'm just going to show you a kind of a funny, different take on that to just show you how you can use this for different shapes. So real quick, I'm going to cut out the shape of my hand. All right. So with this slab, so I'm going to use this hump mold. Again, it's metal, so I'm going to lay this thin plastic over it. Paper would be fine as well. You just might get a little more like paper impressions that you need to clean up later. going to then lay my slab over it and again gently impress the shape of the hump mold. And again, this is plastic and metal, so I'm not going to cover this. I'm going to monitor it really carefully until it is strong enough to support itself. Okay, so real quick, we're going to talk about feet for things using a hump mold. So because it's a hump mold and we can see the bottom of the pot, we can actually start to work on the feet before even this is sturdy enough to support itself. So a couple of options for feet. We can add feet on like this. These are y'all's pots. So we can scratch and score and add our feet on. We can also add a foot ring. Now this is a thrown pot, but as you can see there's this foot ring, and we can do a hand-built version of that. Take a look at the bowls and other containers around your house and see what kind of foot or foot ring or bottom they have. For our added-on feet, we can build them now and then add them on when they and the pot are leather hard. So I'm going to do exactly what I did with my pinch pots. I'm going to cut 3 pieces of clay that are about the same size, and then I'm going to make the feet the shape I want. These could be little carrots again. They could be less pointy feet like these, which are super cute. I'm gonna do something kind of funny now. I'm gonna do a little swirl. So I made a carrot, and then I'm going to roll it up, and then the feet will be like that. Now, if I tried to attach these now, everything would just squish. So I'm not going to do that, but I am going to build my 3 feet. And I'm just kind of spacing out where they'll go. I'm giving this a little tap to make that surface area a bit bigger. Now, something to keep in mind, just like with our pinch pots, we don't want these to be so close to the middle that the pot is super tippy. So we want to kind of figure out where they're going to go to hold the pot nice and firm. And now I'm just going to set these aside, and I'm going to let them get to leather hard, let this get to leather hard, and then I will scratch and score and connect them. Another option is a foot ring. I'm going to just make a coil, and I want this coil to be pretty even. And now I'm going to decide where my foot ring goes, and when I think it looks good, I'll go ahead and connect it. I'm just smoothing where that connection is. Okay, making sure it's nice and round and centered. And same thing, I'm going to let both of these get to leather hard, and then I'm going to connect them by scratching and scoring. So I will show you when it gets to that point. Our last foot ring option is no foot ring. This piece is on a mold that just naturally has a flat bottom once we tip this over, and so I can just set this on the table with no foot ring. I could also, with something like this, when it's supporting itself, I could just give this a little tap to flatten this just so it doesn't wobble. I could let it wobble and use that to my advantage and have that be part of the design. But yes, no foot ring or no feet is also an option. Once your foot ring and your pot have started to set up, you can go ahead and attach the foot ring. They don't need to be quite leather hard, but like this is supporting itself. That's one nice thing about using the hump mold, because our foot or foot ring area is visible and accessible to us. So I'm just smoothing out my ring, my coil that I've made into a foot ring. That little part where it attaches, I just make sure it looks good. And then I'm going to center it as best I can. could measure. I'm just gonna eyeball this, and I'm gonna do just a light ring with my needle tool on the inside and the outside so that I know where my scratching and scoring needs to go. Okay, then I'm going to remove it. I'm gonna use my fork, a serrated rib, or there are tools made for scratching and scoring. Those work well as also. Fork is easy to find and free or cheap at a thrift store. So I'm giving it a good scratch. I'm trying to stay pretty close to that little line, that little ring that I made, so that I can have less to clean up, but you know, no big deal. Just tidy it up once you're done. Same here, I'm just trying to do the sort of top of this ring. And I'm making sure I do really good scratching and scoring, lots of cross hatching. All right, I'm gonna use a paintbrush and just gently moisten the ring. Again, I want to kind of fill in some of those fill in the nooks and crannies, but I don't want it to be spilling over. Same with my foot ring. Going to gently, I'm pressing and I'm kind of turning just a little bit. I don't want to squish this. I don't really want to change the shape at all. I just want to make sure that it gets nice and velcroed. Nice and velcroed. And again, if I were to rip this off, for sure it would come off. But if I just give it a little handle and it's firmly on there, I know it's good. Basically, if something easily just comes apart, it's going to come apart in the kiln anyway. That's why we give it a little check. And you can see I've got just a little bit of scratching and scoring to clean up, so I'm going to do that now. And a wooden knife is good for this, just to smooth out where a little bit of that scratching and scoring is peeking through. You can use any tool that sort of fits into that area. And then I like to use a pretty dry brush just to kind of get in that little corner and make sure it's smoothed out. I use it is moist, but there's not a lot of water on it. Water helps clay attach and of course be plastic, but at the stage where we're attaching, too much water can actually make things crack. So that's another reason why we want to add just enough water. Okay, so again, I'm just smoothing around that connection. Another thing that we can do to control water is to use a sponge that I've squeezed out completely, so you can see there's not really any water coming out, and then just pick up any water that's left behind from that construction attachment. All right, same on the inside. Okay, so now if this is hard enough to pick up, we can give it a little tap just to flatten the edge of that coil. And now this is ready to decorate. We can smooth the edges. We can just use a sponge to smooth that slabby edge. We can also use our fingers to pinch the edge to give it a more organic finish. If we start to work and we feel like our pot is moving, then it's not hard enough yet, and you can probably guess what we do. We simply put it back and wait a little longer, again monitoring it closely to make sure that it doesn't get too dry, but we want to decorate and work with it when it's in a dry enough state that it can support itself. Check in on our other hump mold. This one is pretty sturdy, so I'm going to take it off of its mold and check it out. Let's look and see if this will sit on its own. It's flat enough, because this part of the mold was flat, that it's not moving. So I think this would be one of those things that doesn't need an additional foot, although we could add one. We could add one, we could add feet. So this one, as long as it can support itself, is ready to decorate. For this one, I'm actually going to cover it in a black underglaze, wax it, and then do sgraffito for bones, and then do those, do the cheater mishima, so fill in that sgraffito with some white underglaze. So it'll be kind of Halloween-y. All right, so that is the hump mold.